Welcome to today's episode of Power of the Mind, the podcast where we give you simple tools to improve your relationship with yourself and with others. In today's episode, we're going to talk about weight loss. Alicia is taking a diet pill, and we discuss diet pills in general and some of the underlying psychology related to weight. It's pretty powerful and pretty interesting stuff. Hope you stay tuned.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Cast 11 and Talking Glass Studios as we dive into Power of the Mind with Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare and the awesome Greg Struve. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great.
Nice. Well, I shared something with you before we started filming today, and it was now the topic of conversations. I'm excited.
Indeed.
So we're talking about just diet fads and different weight loss strategies, and in particularly phentermine, which is basically have been told that this is going to be awesome for you. It's going to be amazing, and it is so far. I'm loving it. It's great. Lost like almost 30 pounds, which is spectacular for me.
Wow.
And it basically tells my body, like, you're not hungry, so don't eat. And you just have to remind yourself to eat, like, little things here and there, whatever. And they tell you, there's a science behind it, and you need to eat this many calories and make sure you're not just not eating.
Sure. And it's a stimulant too, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So if you hear me talking more and, whatever, but... So my question is...
If the bathroom mysteriously gets cleaned on the break or something.
Hold on, I'll be right back as I'm dusting. But it was, I did hear, somebody said that, because I'm on a couple of these like websites or Facebook pages, that you may test positive for like methamphetamine in your system. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have this bottle right here. This is
that happened to me once. I was doing a medical study.
Yeah.
When I was 22, we used to tour the country with a music group, and we came off tour. And I needed some money, and they had a medical study where you could put yourself inpatient. And I studied the impact of a medicine. Gosh, what did it do? I think they were trying to figure out if you took this medicine it was for HIV, and it was designed to decrease the fungal load of the body somehow. Apparently there's a lot of fungal activity in late stage HIV clients. And so they gave us this amazing breakfast, and then we took this medicine. And then they fed us regular hospital food and watched for the next 10 days. And then they gave me $1,600 and I could buy a car. So it was great fun for me. Sat in this hospital. But anyway, I tested positive for amphetamines right before it. The doctor was like, you don't look like someone who has taken amphetamines recently. Is this I said, no, it wasn't. I definitely did not take any amphetamines. So I had drank. I had been driving a coach bus for a while, and I had drank quite a bit of energy. What was energy drinks then? Energy drinks like they are now. But anyway, I once tested positive for meth, so I have that going for me. But so the website says be careful. Yeah. If you got a pee test, it could be a bad deal for you, huh? Yeah.
Well, don't plan on taking a pee test, but so my question is, because I'm assuming, eventually I'm going to stop taking these pills, or you'll start like weaning yourself off. But I have noticed if I go too long without taking my morning pill now, I'll start to get a headache, or I'll start to get a little just kind of a little discombobulated. So I'm like, okay, what is happening to me? Like, what is, and it, everything I've read is they are, they're FDA certified. They're okay. You could actually take them for the rest of your life if you wanted to. Some states do tell you can only take them for 90 days and then you cannot get another prescription. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, is it, because we've talked about, like weight loss or, kind of the triggers and stuff of people, but I don't want to hear you say anything like, no, Alicia, you need to stop taking these because I'm really happy right now.
Oh, wow. Well, you're having a great time, and I wouldn't, it's outside it's above my pay grade to tell you what to take or not to take. Yeah, I probably wouldn't jump into that argument very quickly at all. But it sounds like it's just, Ritalin or Adderall kind of in the same family as those guys. And there is a little bit of dependency that shows up there. It's fairly normal. Caffeine, if you go drink coffee every day for a month and then stop drinking coffee for a couple of days, you'll notice your body will say, let's have some coffee.
Yeah. I gave up Diet Coke too, so that's crazy. It's just, I'm a mess now.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
I'm so sad.
That sounds...
I miss it.
Yeah. Good old Diet Coke.
Good old Diet Coke.
There really is actually a degree to which our addictions become friends. if you think about from a attachment perspective, what we tell a parent to do is to be consistent and to make the child, essentially to help the child feel better in a certain, and again, that's a broad statement. It doesn't necessarily need to be universally applied to all of parenting, but that's basically what effective parenting is. Hey, you're having a hard time. Let me help you feel better, and I'll be there consistently for you. And things like alcohol or opiates or amphetamines do that. They do the exact same thing every time. They always make you feel better when you are sad and distressed. And so there's some really interesting, I think it's really interesting to think about that element of addiction as well, the consistency and the stability that can be attached to it. And so giving up a thing like Diet Coke, yeah, absolutely, there's going to be some grief.
It's funny because right before I met with you today, I went into the local corner store I get the same soda like I used to get, but I put water in it now. Oh. And if I'm not paying attention, it'll go right under that Diet Coke. And I've done that
dump it out a couple
4 or 5 times.
Sure.
Yeah, so I've had to dump it out or whatever. But it's so funny, just the habit of, and I still do it in that same cup because it's comforting to me. It's it's like a ritual. It's a habit. I go in and get my morning soda, which is now ice water. But
have you tried club soda?
I don't like it, but I bought one of those little zippy fizz things too zip thing.
Some people giving up soda or beer. Actually, I have a friend and she gave up beer and decided to get one of the club soda things and just drinks bubble water.
Yeah, I do. I tried it. It was, but I like the Zip Fizz, but that's vitamin B12 and it's a lot of vitamins.
Bit of a kick to it.
A lot of caffeine in there.
Yeah.
So, well, you do what you do. But it was funny because you talked about it a while back and I never wanted to dive into it because, it was uncomfortable at the time to talk about weight too much because I was like, I know I need to lose weight. And now we're 30 pounds down. So I'm like, okay, we've got a long ways to go, but I feel a little more comfortable opening the Pandora's box. But you talked about overweight and, people that were, the minute they kind of get close to their goal.
Oh yeah, the ACEs study is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I didn't push on it because I was like, I don't want to hear it because I don't want to be told what's wrong. Alicia, you got to face this or whatever. So now I'm a little more comfortable. So Can we open up that box a little bit?
Well, yeah, the ACEs studies were done in, I think, San Diego back in the 1980s. And Kaiser Permanente is a place out there. Kaiser Permanente sponsored a study where they went ahead and took a bunch of folks who were on their health plan who were morbidly obese, like in the 400, 500, 600 pound range, if I remember correctly. Or maybe they didn't have that qualification, but I know a lot of the folks were really at that level of sort of dangerously obese. And obviously, if you're Kaiser Permanente, you want to help these people not be that way because it's going to cost you a ton of money along the line. So Kaiser completely paid for everything, and they got them enrolled in a program, and they had this doctor build a program for them that really was great and helped them lose their weight. And they would get to their goal weight and immediately quit. Sometimes they get within sight of their goal weight, and then they would drop out of the program and go right back to their old habits and kind of move back up to where they were. And this doctor was just really curious about it. And then he noticed that when he would talk to these folks and ask them questions about their childhood, their background, and get to know them a little bit better, inevitably they had awful, awful, awful stories of things that had happened to them. And he started to compile and categorize the things that had happened. He developed the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale. And you can Google it, ACE study or Adverse Childhood Experiences, and take it, and you'll get a score from 1 to 10. And the results of the study are just incredible. So and the adverse childhood experiences include things like, were your parents divorced? Were you, was there unwanted sexual contact as a kid? Did you have a family member go to jail? Did you have, I wish I could, I don't know all 10 of them off the top of my head, but they cover a pretty broad category: physical abuse, domestic violence, addiction, things of that nature are all in the list. And if you score a 0, a 1, or a 2, I wish I could remember the percentages off the top of my head, but an awful lot of people kind of fall into that category. Once you start scoring into the 3 category, your likelihood of developing sort of adverse side effects in your life, for example, in this case, being obese, starts to increase a little bit. Same thing with addiction. I want to say divorce was in there too. There's a lot of different sort of adverse consequences that would show up in there. When you got to 4, the percentage increased by like a factor of 10.
Wow.
So I think there was maybe it was a factor of 100. Maybe there's 1,000 or 2,000% increase in the likelihood that you'll have an addiction if you go from an ACEs score of 3 to an ACEs score of 4. And if you go up to an ACEs score of 6, your lifespan is shortened by about 20 years.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? People with an ACEs score of 6 live to their 60s and then they die. And they think it's probably because of all the cortisol that is in the nervous system all the time if you have a real high ACEs score, if you're stuck in that fight-flight mode all the time. So that was really incredible material. And it has, when they talk about the trauma-informed movement, the ACEs study has really been the foundation of that. And the knowledge and realization, last episode we talked about single parenting. I believe that's one of your parents are divorced is one of the questions on there. There's so much that goes into childhood, but those external circumstances can have a big factor. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody who gets to a goal weight and then kind of goes back to their old ways has a high ACEs score. Right. There can be a lot of different reasons for that. There can, for some people, we all have a lot of differing parts of ourselves. I can think of a person I've worked with who, in adolescence, this individual was very attractive to the world, right? She had a lot. And I always think it's a shame if I have somebody who comes into adolescence and discovers they're very attractive and doesn't have much guidance, because the world can be very predatory. Mm-hmm. And people can be and also peers can be pretty hard on a person who's really, really good looking or really, really accomplished in some way because they find themselves intimidated by them. So having a lot of money, a lot of beauty, a lot of fame, really an excessive amount of almost anything, intelligence, any of that stuff, requires a certain amount of coaching and a mentor perhaps, And this poor gal made it into adolescence without a lot of guidance and concern, but she definitely, had to contend with being a uniquely attractive human being. And she had a trusted adult who came onto her and kind of violated that trust. And she had a couple other experiences, and eventually she one day decided she didn't want to do that anymore. And lo and behold, because of that decision, ended up gaining quite a bit of weight. But she was unconscious of that decision. She hadn't thought it wasn't necessarily aware of it at the time, and certainly wasn't carrying that awareness into her adulthood. And then we spent some time talking, and one of the biggest issues is, my health is not good. The people are telling me that I need to do something about my weight, and I can't, and I don't know why. And we really dug into, what does it mean to be thin? What does it mean to be the weight you want to be? And one of her biggest fears was men will like me. Oh, interesting. Are you excited about that? Hell no. I'm not at all interested in it. I had another client, actually very similar background and story, except this client, in her case, she had acted out quite a bit sexually and really struggled to be loyal in her relationships and really struggled with any kind of boundaries, right? Anytime somebody was interested, she was interested too. Some people, it can be a gift or a curse, but our libido is a trait, right? We come out of the womb with a setting, and it can be adjusted and played with, but some people have a very, very high libido biologically, and some people have a very low libido. It's actually about gas and brakes. I think we covered that in different episodes, right? So this gal's case, she just had some pretty high gas and not a lot of brakes. She just was kind of down with whatever.
Let's go, right?
Yeah, but that had some strongly negative impacts on her intimate relationships. And so she found somebody she liked and she settled down. And one of the ways that she protected herself was she got heavy. She got heavy, yeah, and that was her goal. And so the challenge she had now is she was in a situation where her body wasn't working very well because of how heavy she was. But there was another part of her that said, and it was also a punishment thing too. You know, she came out of I think this gal came out of a Catholic background, and really was very ashamed of her choices with sex. And so this is a self-punishment piece too. So there was a lot sort of stacked into the experience of being overweight and what it meant. And in these two gals' case, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, neither of them had idyllic childhoods, but neither of them also, I don't remember what their ACEs scores were, because I do an ACE test with most of my clients, but neither of them strike me as, you know, particularly profoundly traumatized. You know, I've had clients who've been profoundly traumatized. And in this case, that wasn't the case. You can make decisions that, you know, people assume. And then the other thing is these decisions are made very quickly and kind of subtly, and then they're very quickly forgotten about a lot of the time. And so it's really just digging into like, well, what would it really mean to lose weight for you? What are you excited about? Well, I'd feel better, and I would like to look nicer if I feel like that makes me look nicer, and all this other stuff. And what are you afraid of? Well, that question can be really, really revealing. And it can be very different for everybody. And some people say, nothing. So we'll try. You're probably afraid of something. If you're not really afraid of anything, just make some stuff up. What might you be afraid of? You know, if you could think of something to be afraid of, what would it be? And they'll come up with a good answer a lot of the time.
Well, and it's funny because we just talked about, you know, in the last episode of kind of, you know, my husband, who's very like, don't ever leave me type situation.
Sure.
And, you know, it's very unspoken. Like, he's not like, you must stay with me forever, but it's very,
well, that is the
evident,
idea behind a marriage and an intimate
course,
relationship. And so it wouldn't be an unreasonable.
Yeah. So, and I noticed like the more weight I lose, the more insecure that, you know, he'll get.
Oh, sure.
And
so you might discover that's part of the process for you.
That might be a trigger for some women. Like, I got down to this weight. I'm feeling good. But husband is not super happy about that, which, you know, right now we're going through this is awesome. Good job. You know, we, you know, celebrate the little milestones together. But, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking, is that kind of what's triggered me in the past to give up or to just stop or go do something else?
It could be your belief about it too and not his, right? It could even be that doesn't have that belief necessarily, but you do. You think, well, I need to, you know, I might take better care of him by doing it this way or whatever. Yeah.
That's interesting because it was, I watch the same women, the same group of women kind of, and you see them on, you know, I'm on all the sites now, you know, following people around, you know, that are doing the same thing. And it's, I just, you know, I'll lose 20 pounds and then I'll just gain it all back or whatever. So it's interesting to me, just the psychology of, you know, not being able to stick to something or, you know, because it's like, I know everything to do, you know, diet, exercise, whatever. I have it on good authority that if you burn more calories than you consume, you will decrease in size. And if you burn less calories than you consume, you will increase in size. It's mostly a math problem. I can attest to that. Now, there are some really interesting changes too that happen hormonally. When a person's hormones shift, they can, or the thyroid is a big part of metabolism, right? So some people with hypothyroidism, you know, they can't hardly get rid of the stuff. And I had a buddy who had hyperthyroidism and he couldn't keep weight on to save his life. Go to the old country buffet and get thrown out. You get out of here. We can't feed you. Get out. But I have a couple friends who are on the same diet that I'm doing, and it's like it was not working for them. And then they found out it was like thyroid related or whatever. Exactly. So. Yeah, I think it's really valuable. I just have been so impressed by what a naturopathic panel can do for my clients. You know, the ones who can afford it. It's you know, you end up down $600-700, maybe more, when all's said and done, between talking to the doctor and getting the blood draw. Maybe $500. I don't know. It's a substantial amount of money, and it is incredibly insightful. Hypoglycemia. I was just listening to one of my favorite teachers talk about how hypoglycemia can play a huge role in addiction. Right, a lot of those folks who really struggle with addiction, part of it is their blood sugar varies so significantly that they feel just kind of crazy when their blood sugar is low, and that can lead them back out. You take a lot of these folks completely off sugar and everything gets better very quickly. Wow. And it's a small subset, but it's something. Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that comes up. That and the hormonal side of things comes up in one of those panels really easily. And I had a guy one time came to see me, and we did, I think I might have talked about this here before, but I had a guy one time, he came to see me, and we did all the normal stuff that I do for depression. Said, you're mad at yourself. What are you mad about? Depression's an inward temper tantrum. So what are you angry about? Where does it come from? We got into it. We dug through all this material, and finally about 10, and he was already on some SSRIs, and he didn't like them that much. And then finally about 10, 12 sessions in, I said, you know what, why don't you go get a panel and just see what comes up, and let's see what your testosterone looks like. And he got a panel, and his testosterone was in the tank, and he got some testosterone supplements, and he quit because he was fine.
He's like, well,
we didn't have anything else to talk about now.
Yeah,
well, whatever.
That's good, right?
Yeah, it is good. Like them when they graduate, but yeah, so it goes a long way. The hormone side of things goes.
I just think for, obesity or people that are just struggling, a lot of it is psychological. It's just keeping them, where they're content or happy or just trying to figure it out. But I don't know, there comes a time when I'm like for me, just this time around, I'm like, okay, I'm doing something. And so this is working for me now. And I'm, and I get nervous because I'm like, okay, I need to set up a plan. Like, how am I going to, continue this when, we stop taking this or when we start doing that? Because, it is what it is. But it'd be wonderful for you to go, oh, it's because of this, but now you're cured, so don't worry about it. So,
well, one thing I do think is really interesting, sit down with a pen and paper and write out the advantages and the disadvantages of your current situation. We all tend to be black and white around weight.
Yeah.
What's good and what do I like and what do I dislike? And write freehand and freestyle and try to just be really, really honest with yourself and just experiment. And if it comes across your mind, put it on paper and you will be surprised what you discover. We all have a lot of conflicting beliefs. There's a big crew of people in there, a big crew of personalities, personas, parts, whatever you want to call them. There's lots of different words for them, but a lot of the times when we made a decision when we were 5 or 6 years old or 10 years old or 15 years old and haven't thought much of it since. And for a lot of that stuff, not always, but often bringing it to light can be very, very helpful and sometimes even disarm the belief. But you learn a lot that way.
Yeah. Well, good to know. Good to know. So I'm okay. I may not pass a drug test, but I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, well, we won't. As long as you don't have your pee in a cup, you should be all right, I guess.
Yeah, I feel fine. I feel much better. So it's working. So I'll keep doing it, and I'll keep you posted and make sure I'm not. If you see me on the street corner, it's gone too far, Alicia. Stop what you're doing. But
what's really interesting actually is I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with a client on methamphetamine, and they came into treatment and got better and started to eat because you starve your body a little bit. Or even if they didn't get that far, they gained a little bit of weight and they went back out. And methamphetamine can very much be tied into an eating disorder. And body image, it's you smoke some meth and you're going to lose weight. You're going to lose a lot of weight very fast. And for folks who that is a core issue for, it can be a real challenge.
Well, and back in the 80s, it was a very popular way to lose weight, and it was
speed. Yeah. Well, that's before that amphetamine. That stuff wasn't nearly as strong.
Yeah.
But it was. I can remember who was I talking to. This gal, I think it was in the 80s, and she went to a diet clinic, and everybody lost lots of weight, but then it got shut down because it was doing.
What was happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember that back in the 80s. It was like that group of, my mom's friends and stuff. And it was like, oh, this is, and then you look back when you're older and you're like, I think you guys were doing I don't think that was what you're supposed to be doing. So that was difficult for me too. When, on this part, when they're like, well, you're just going to take a pill and it's going to make you not hungry and you'll just have to, and, I've struggled with that. I never want to be, like anybody in my past. I want to just do my thing and I don't want to be dependent on anything, but it was so far so good. We'll see.
Well, yeah, I don't. Again, you're under the supervision of a medical professional, so you're probably not going to need to worry about it too much.
Awesome. Well, I feel better talking to you because I'm like, after
we won't admit you.
No,
you're not going to get admitted.
You got another one. You got another quiet. So, well, thank you for just talking me through that because it was a little bit just I know I've always been hesitant to like go down any road with you when you talk about, weight or anything. I'm like, I want to talk about it. I want to hear it. So,
well, it's a very sensitive issue and can be real challenging. And part of the challenge is that you get a lot of guilt in there, you get a lot of shame in there. And what we don't realize is we almost always have mixed emotions. There's almost always some belief system in there. And again, sometimes it's just biology, but as a general rule, there's a belief system or a series of belief systems in there that are contradictory and confusing and challenging. And there is a belief that, being a different size would negatively impact me. And it's not always something we're aware of. And becoming aware of it can be very helpful.
Yeah. It's interesting because I noticed there's a few websites out there now, like diet apps and stuff that you can do that are more about the psychology of losing weight. And not the,
really? Yeah.
It's not just calories in, calories out.
Fitness
but it's
Pal,
more,
like tracking your calories.
Yeah, just kind of, tapping into your feelings of the day and journaling and stuff like that. So exactly what you're talking about. So I started doing that until I found, the magic right now. So I'm like, but
yeah.
I think to help me go from one to the other, I think I will start doing the journaling and really start looking at the psychology of it.
That kind of answers your question about, the yo-yo side of things. Because if I involve an external, and this is true in any circumstance, whether it's weight or something else, if I see this with divorce, actually, a lot of the time, it's not a perfect parallel. People say, I'm going to leave my spouse. And they go get another one. And 2 years later, they realize they just kind of married, either they left their mom and married their dad, or they married kind of the same person. And what happens is if we don't do the work, then we kind of, more or less, we tend to put ourselves into a very similar situation again. And so that's one of the benefits of looking at like the beliefs underneath things and, resolving any trauma that might be there around the belief system or any compulsive, food. It's really easy to be compulsive with food. Food's very easy thing to get.
It's delicious.
It's delicious. That's how food is made. So, looking at what's underlying those compulsions. What are the, what are the perceived benefits, the perceived losses, etc.
Yeah. Well, thank you for another weekly therapy session for me. I'll have another one next week, I'm sure. So, you guys, thank you so much for tuning into Power of the Mind with the awesome Greg Struve and Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare. I just thank you. Appreciate always having you on. So
I appreciate you. I enjoy it. So
yeah, it's your favorite part of my week.
Me too. See you next week.
We'll see you later.
For information about mental health and addiction treatment, you can reach out to Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare online at granitemountainbhc.com. That's Granite Mountain BHC.com. Or give us a call at 877-338-6287. That's 877-338-6287. If you have a comment about this podcast or a question you'd like us to address in the podcast, you can check out the Contact Us page at my website, gregstruve.com. That's GREGSTRUV as in Victor, E as in Edward.com. This has been a Cast 11 production brought to you by Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare. This episode was produced by Austin Morrison. Follow Cast 11 on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Talking Glass Media.